welcome Representative Holt. This is our third week in a row.
Yeah, absolutely. How you doing,
Yeah.
Oliver?
Good, great. It was interesting seeing snow out there this morning.
Yeah, we'd kind of gotten used to some nicer weather, but I hear it's going to be almost 60 again in a day or two, so it won't last long.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I was thinking it was spring and got up to the white blanket everywhere, although it's pretty thin. I think it's only a few inches, but
yeah,
it'll be gone soon.
Absolutely.
So you were, this morning you had a visit from the Secretary of Agriculture, is that right?
Yeah, Secretary of Agriculture Mike Nagg came to Harlan to the Farm Service Co-op there, and we had a great meeting there. Asked a lot of questions about what was going on and some concerns about various chemical availability and stuff that farmers critically need and things of that kind. So it was a very good meeting.
That's great. And we had a pretty crazy week this week too. I was thinking it was mostly just about the what is a woman bill, but we were just talking about the abortion bill. Yeah. If you want to share that, I'd be glad to talk to you about it.
Sure. Yeah. And the What is a Woman bill is extremely important too. I look forward to discussing that as well. It was a very interesting, robust couple of days at the Capitol. This week has been interesting. On the personal level, as chair of Judiciary Committee, I received a lot of bills, some of them well written, some of them not. I received what was supposedly a pro-life bill, House File 2256, that I would not run. And when I refused to run it, then some of the sponsors of it put out a call to action. And I had a lot of very interesting individuals come on my Facebook page. But a lot of your listeners or viewers probably have never heard of this. I had not heard about it until the last few days. Abortion abolitionists. Abortion abolitionists are a fringe at this point of the pro-life movement who believe that the women who have abortion should be prosecuted, put in jail, and even given the death penalty. This has never been the position of the pro-life movement. It's certainly not my position. And so this legislation, House File 2256, would have allowed for women to be prosecuted in an abortion situation. The reason I think that's a terrible idea and has never been what the pro-life movement has tried to get at. We've tried to, the pro-life movement has, tried to prevent abortion providers, those sorts of things, put laws into place, but it's never been about prosecuting women who I believe in most cases are victims themselves in a very bad situation. I think most probably women who have abortion are young. They don't have the support system in place that they need to have the child. They find out they're pregnant. They're scared. They don't have that support system or strong family system in place. Perhaps they've got boyfriends who are pressuring them to get an abortion, maybe even family members. So they go to an abortion provider and are told that everything's going to be fine. This is the answer. They get the abortion, and then in many cases go through years and years and years of mental struggles as a result of having that abortion. And now this movement believes we should come along and imprison those young women, maybe even give them the death penalty if a state has a death penalty. I think that's absurd and extreme. It's ridiculous. And that is why I did not advance House File 2256. What happened in Iowa was that a number of pro-life organizations initially signed on to the legislation in support without realizing, perhaps they should read them closer, but they didn't realize that the legislation actually allowed for the prosecution of women. Once they found that out, they all withdrew their support for the legislation. So it has no support from any pro-life organization in Iowa. I would just share this quote with you from the Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America group. They represent thousands and thousands of pro-life groups all over the country in every state. And they made this statement in a year ago regarding this movement and this idea. They said, quote, "Women are victims of abortion and require our compassion and support, as well as ready access to counseling and social services in the days, weeks, months, and years following an abortion. As national and state pro-life organizations representing tens of millions of pro-life men, women, and children across the country, let us be clear. We state unequivocally that we do not support any measure seeking to criminalize or punish women, and we stand firmly opposed to include such penalties in legislation," unquote. And so that is exactly what I believe as well. So that is why I did not advance this legislation. It was poorly written, but in addition to that, it allowed for the prosecution of women. So that is why I did not advance House File 2256. And interestingly enough, folks that want to get on my Facebook page will see a lot of individuals identifying themselves as pastors who presume to determine what is in my heart. Whether God or the devil is in my heart, they seem to have a hotline to God on that issue. So I consider that to be a level of arrogance that's not acceptable.
I
But in
just
any
pulled
event,
up your Facebook page and I'm
yeah,
looking through this. And how do you deal with that kind of backlash? Because you get it all the
yeah,
time. You're going to get it
yeah,
from this, you're going to get it
yeah,
from the trans cult, you're going to get it from,
yeah,
every side. I mean, you've done this for 10 years.
yeah.
Obviously, as a retired Marine, you're probably have some thick skin, but I mean, how do you deal with that?
Well, I'm not going to lie. It's more difficult when you get it like this than when I get it from the left. I have no problem getting arrows from the left because I get them all the time, and I just know I'm over the target. But when you've been in the trenches for 10 years fighting on a particular issue, and everyone knows very well what your record is, and then all of a sudden you get folks like this who decide, number one, they know what's in your heart. That let's say I've been told the devil's in my heart, and the devil controls me, and because I have a strategy, I'm not. This one's really interesting to me because I have a strategy. I'm not trusting God. I think these things are really. I don't want to be like they are. I'm not going to judge what's in their heart because I think we're warned about that in the Bible. I don't think anyone knows what is in a man or woman's heart except God. So I won't go there. We can certainly discern and make decisions on people's actions in terms of whether we believe they're wrong or whether we agree with them or not. But going so far as to suggest what's in someone's heart, I think is wrong. And in my time in the legislature, I think what I would say is I've seen a number of times where people of faith arrive at different conclusions on particular issues. I don't think that one side has the devil in their heart because they disagree with someone else of faith. I think that God uses all sorts of situations, and He probably uses two people of faith who arrive at a different conclusion sincerely. He probably uses that to his purpose, and I think that's how things work. So I have no problem with folks disagreeing with me on this position. I do have a problem with folks who call themselves pastors who would say some of the things that have been said on my Facebook page. But the way that I deal with it is, I mean, I'm just letting them go on and say what they want to say, because if they use obscenity, if they use profanity, if they begin attacking other people in a personal way, like other people who are posting, then sometimes I will block them or delete their comments if it rises to a certain level. But otherwise, I've just been letting them speak because folks need to go in there and recognize, number one, what we're going through, what legislators go through that are actually up there trying to fight the good fight and do the right thing. And when somebody disagrees with a tactic, not even on the issue, I mean, I think everybody on there is probably pro-life. It's just that there's one group that's now decided they think they should put women in jail that have an abortion, and then there are those who do not believe in any way that is the proper tactic or the way to handle this. And
Yeah.
so, just let them go on and say what they want to say, and we'll go on from there. They did decide they were going to come to my district and let everybody know my position, which my response to that was, "You go for it. I will have no problem standing up in front of any group of individuals and telling them why I think it's a horrible idea to prosecute and put women in jail who have had an abortion." This is a fringe movement that I would predict right now, if this becomes mainstream of the pro-life movement will never win another argument before the American people, because this philosophy will be profoundly rejected. And so it's bad, but they have a right to their opinion, and we'll move on. But I will never advance such a piece of legislation. Period.
I just skimmed it, but what do you think besides the prosecution of women who have had an abortion? Do you think there's other issues with the bill?
I don't think it's written well. When I had a couple of when I had a couple of legal scholars look over the legislation, their first responses were, "This isn't written well." There's also a preamble to it. We don't do preambles in Iowa, where it kind of talks about legislative intent and all this stuff. We have never done that sort of thing in Iowa. We don't do preambles, or the code would be way bigger than it already is. We simply put into code what the law is going to be. So there are those issues, but the main issue again that I have is the fact that and strategically there's a number of other issues. We can talk about those. We have we passed a heartbeat bill. There's currently an injunction before it. It's moving through the courts. Probably next summer timeframe is when we're going to get a ruling from the Iowa Supreme Court on the heartbeat bill. I have a number of legal strategists telling me and others in the pro-life movement that as hard as it is, as difficult as it is, we have to wait for that heartbeat ruling before we decide what we're going to do next, because anything we do at this point will also, so we have a heartbeat bill going through the courts. This legislation would basically be life at conception. And I believe in life at conception, but just basically would outlaw any abortion, period, which I would support, except that it also wants to put women in jail, which is I do not support. But we do not have the votes for life at conception in the House or probably the Senate. I won't speak for the Senate, but we don't have votes for that because there is the recognition that we have to wait for this heartbeat decision to see where we go next. And that is the consensus, I believe, for most in the pro-life community. It's the consensus of a number of attorneys. And so we need to wait. And when I talked about, thinking strategically, that's when I was told that I'm not trusting in God. And I got to tell you that, my reading of the Bible is that we pray for wisdom, we pray for guidance, we pray for strength. And then based upon those prayers, we have to put a plan together. If you don't put a plan together, you're an idiot. I mean, there's no other way to put it. I can't think of any hardly thing in the Bible at all where there weren't plans made. And so I think that's not relying on God. That's using the brain that God gave us, is how I look at that. But if you look back at where we are today, when we passed the heartbeat bill originally, and then under the Chief Justice Cady, the Iowa Supreme Court was very liberal at that time. Between lower courts and the Iowa Supreme Court, they struck down our heartbeat bill. They struck down our 72-hour waiting period. And at that point, folks that have a good memory will know that I ran judicial nomination reform. Judicial nomination reform was done so that our good pro-life governor, Governor Kim Reynolds, could get more constructionist, conservative judges on the bench to arrive at a different conclusion. So you want to talk about strategy, let's talk about strategy and why it's important that we use the brain God gave us. So after the heartbeat bill and the 72-hour waiting period were struck down, these are the things we did strategically. We did judicial nomination reform to put constructionist, conservative judges on the bench. And unfortunately, Chief Justice Cady passed away from a heart attack. That was terrible, but that opened up a position on the Supreme Court, as well as several retirements. As a result of the judicial nomination reform, Governor Kim Reynolds had a stronger voice in those nomination processes, and she was able to put some really great conservative constructionist judges on the bench, such as Christopher McDonald as an example. So we did that. And then I said, you know what? Why don't we pass a 24-hour waiting period? Because that's been upheld on the federal level. We passed a 24-hour waiting period. Planned Parenthood is going to sue us, and they did. The court will issue an injunction. They did. And then this will get in front of the Iowa Supreme Court again. But now we have a constructionist conservative court. And what happened? Just before or just after, I don't remember the timing, but right around the same time that Roe v. Wade was struck down on the federal level, the Iowa Supreme Court struck down the Cady Court ruling creating a fundamental right to abortion in the Iowa Constitution. A huge, huge, monumental victory. Had that not been done, there would have been nothing we could have done in the state of Iowa. There would have been abortion up to birth. Because of that fundamental right to abortion, it was created by the Cady Court. So that was struck down. It was a monumental victory, but they didn't go far enough. They didn't allow the heartbeat bill to go into place to become law. So we went back in and passed it again. Planned Parenthood sued again. It's going through the courts, whether we like it or not. And I understand the passion on this issue because there are babies being aborted every day. I understand that, and that's on my heart every day. But I don't believe we have any choice but to await that heartbeat decision. And then based upon that decision, we can know where to go next. And I would also say to folks is you got to be very, very careful that you bring the people along with you. It is our responsibility as leaders to tell people what we believe and why we believe it and why we believe it is the best course of action. If every state you can see since Roe v. Wade was struck down, in every state where the abortion issue has come up as a constitutional question, the pro-life side has lost on every single vote. And we have to bear that in mind. We have to continue to have these conversations with our fellow citizens about the importance of life and our beliefs that not only from a faith-based perspective, but also from a science perspective, that life begins at conception. We have to continue to have those conversations. I've been told that incrementalism is evil, and I just think that's hilarious, because we wouldn't have constitutional carry today if it had not been done incrementally. You cannot sometimes go from A to Z without going through B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, et cetera. And so these are the steps we have been taking. And once the heartbeat bill decision is made by the Iowa Supreme Court, we'll know where to go next. The other interesting thing I've heard is, well, we should just ignore the court. Sorry, folks, you can say that all day long, but we live in a constitutional republic. We have a system of checks and balances. We have a court system. We have a legislature. We have the governor. We have the legislative, executive, judicial branches. And we respect the roles of those. And no, we're not going to simply ignore the Iowa Supreme Court. That's not how it works. We are a nation of laws. In spite of the fact that a lot of things are fraying at the edges, we need to continue to work hard to be a nation of laws and to respect that process. And so those are the things that we're doing. And that is why House File 2256 did not advance and will not advance. And had I even been stupid enough to have advanced that out of a subcommittee, it would have never passed out of committee, and it would never pass on the House and Senate floor when you're talking about prosecuting young mothers who have already gone through hell having had an abortion. I understand from a moral perspective that abortion is wrong, and I understand from a moral perspective that abortion is the taking of innocent life. However, when you want to talk about putting women in jail, you are going to lose the American people. You're going to lose the people of Iowa. And it is not the way that we need to be going. And so that is why that legislation did not and will not advance.
How can we change the society, or at least here in Iowa, the culture, so that abortion doesn't seem to be an option for a young woman?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think we've done a lot of things in the last few years to try to create more support structure and more supports for young unwed mothers who are in a situation where they're pregnant and they don't know what they're going to do. And so in many cases, they feel their only choice is abortion. And so we have created so many programs and put so many things in place to help unwed mothers go through that process and to have that support, to have that funding that they might need, and that medical care. And we've even extended a lot of programs out once the mother has the child. We've extended a lot of programs, making a lot of different services available to them. And so we're doing a lot of those things. We spent a lot of money, and we will continue to look at ways to, as you said, create an environment where abortion is just, is an option. We don't want it to be an option, but in other words, a woman can look out and see that there's a lot of support there, and abortion doesn't have to be the direction that they go. So we've done a lot of things like that in the last few years, and we'll continue to do so as one of the most effective ways, I think, to reduce abortion.
Yeah, definitely. And how can people that are so passionate about it that they want to pass a law that will prosecute young women get involved to create that change? Because, I sometimes I like to challenge people. I mean, if you're so passionate about it and want to speak so venomously about it and drive in that direction, how can they take that energy and that passion and work, volunteer, get involved, help out these young women, teach young men truth and responsibility?
And I'll be blunt, Oliver. I don't think the vitriol that I've seen from some of these folks suggests to me they're interested in that pathway. I think they're interested in being extremely negative and extremely nasty to their fellow human beings, and they just want to prosecute and throw people in jail. But there are many, many places they could volunteer their time at all kinds of crisis pregnancy centers and all sorts of I'm sorry, the names escape me right now, but all over the state of Iowa, there are organizations that help pregnant women. They can pick one and pick up the phone and call them and volunteer to help. There are these places that provide diapers and provide formula and provide clothing and all sorts of ultrasound right here in Iowa. Crossroads of Crawford County, I think, is getting an ultrasound machine, I believe it is. They're doing all kinds of things to support mothers in situations like this. There's all kinds of places to volunteer. And if these folks who were calling for the prosecution of women and calling people ungodly that don't agree with that approach, if these folks would actually volunteer on the other end, as you're speaking about here,
Yeah.
but that would be a highly effective way to reduce abortion without even thinking about putting a young girl in jail who's already been through absolute hell. I'll tell you, the arrogance of some of the males that have come on my page, I'll just unload right now. They have no idea what these women are going through. Absolutely none. They have no idea that these women are looking out at the world with no support. A lot of times, no good family to uplift them and to hold them and to embrace them. They may be in abusive relationships. They may be in relationships where the man is demanding that she go get an abortion. And then she's fed a bunch of lies by the abortion providers who are in it to make a dollar. And then the world is a dark, dark place after that abortion has taken place. No support structure there. So I agree with the Susan B. Anthony folks from the standpoint that these women are going through hell. And the last thing we ought to even be remotely thinking about is prosecuting them. That's obscene, frankly, and disgusting. We need to be supporting them. And as you said on the front end, the more things we can do to show them that there's a lot of support and a lot of services there to help them get through it, I think is definitely the way to go. And every pro-life bill we've ever advanced has prohibited the providers from providing abortions, and if they violate the law, there would be penalties, obviously, for violating the law for providers, such as the loss of medical licenses, even possibly jail time, depending upon the circumstance. But never, ever has it been contemplated that you would go after the woman who's already grieving, in many cases, from having aborted her child. It's a really, really interesting movement that I wasn't aware of until a few days ago. And now, of course, they're all over my Facebook page, and that's okay because, like I said, I'm not going to advance anything of the kind.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can see your viewpoint there for sure. How do we, instead of teaching sex ed like it's a how-to guide in schools,
Yeah.
teach people in our school system, or teach young people in our school system about responsibility?
Yeah, and a lot of the sex ed stuff, we've been trying to change that because they've been using that to teach a lot of the transgender ideology. So we've really tried to change that to reproductive health. We've changed the grade levels that it can be taught in, and we've done some stipulations in terms of what could be taught. But I think a lot of what you're talking about, Oliver, needs to be done at home. I mean, this needs
Yeah.
to be done by mom and dad at home. There's only so much government can do in this regard. And that's one of the problems we have today because our families have broken down so badly. These things aren't being taught at home. And it's a real problem. I think, and that's one of the things I think public schools get a really bad rap because they're having to do so many things today that they shouldn't have to do because parents are supposed to be doing them and they're not. And that's the huge difference between when I was growing up and going to school in the 1960s and what is happening today. I mean, we could go to school in the 1960s and get taught reading, writing, arithmetic, history, because the other stuff is being taught at home. Morality
Right.
and the golden rule and all the things that are missing today in our society were being taught at home. The only answer is to restore our families and have a revival. I mean, I don't know any other way
Yeah.
around it. The
It's
government
like
can
a
only do so
three-legged
much.
stool: your family, your
Yep.
church, and your school.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Well, that's interesting. Some fireworks up there where you're living.
Yeah,
Some door knockers
absolutely.
out there.
Well,
So
that's what we get. Yeah,
I
that's what
wonder
we
if
get
they
paid
run
for.
into the. I wonder if they run into the trans cult door knockers.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, they can all be out there.
Damned if you
That's
do,
good.
damned if you don't.
That's okay. You just got to come up here and do the right thing. And what I always try to do is tell people exactly what I believe, and I'm going to come up here and fight accordingly. And that is what I have done, and will continue
Now,
to
do
do
you
as
have
long as
any
the people want
folks
me to.
that are pro this bill that will have an intelligent conversation with you that's respectful?
Haven't run into any. I'm sure there may be some there, but I tried to put a couple of responses up and received, well, in emails I was receiving. They did an email campaign and they had hundreds of people call me on the phone and send me lots of emails. And when I would articulate what my position was and why, the standard response was you're ungodly. And so there's not a lot of response you can give to that. So I pretty much stopped responding to the emails because they don't want to have that conversation. They simply believe that they believe in this bill. They believe that women should be prosecuted. And when I explain why this is really not a good idea, they don't like that response. And they, instead of want to continue to have a discussion about the issue, they want to talk about what's in my heart or believe that I'm not following God's will or what have you. So that's not something you can have a conversation with constantly, or frankly. I mean, I don't know how you have a conversation with somebody that believes they know what's in your heart. So you just have to move on. There's nothing I can do. I've articulated my position, and folks can agree with it or disagree with it, but the back and forth has not been productive. So, and I
Yeah.
don't expect them to agree with me. They can disagree with me, but instead of disagreeing and giving me articulate points as to why they disagree, the response is you're ungodly and you don't have God in your heart. There's no response to that.
Well, I'm going to try to share my screen and let's see what happens here. So, we had that going on Monday night. Let's
Yes.
play Laura's testimony.
Hello, my name is Laura Becker, and I'm here today because I was harmed by the lie that biological sex doesn't matter. When I was a child, I was a tomboy, having a hard time fitting in and struggling with depression and anxiety. I was diagnosed on the autism spectrum and experienced chronic psychological and emotional abuse from a parent. These issues destroyed my self-esteem and led to constant rumination about self-harm and suicide. In high school, I learned about being transgender online and in my school's LGBT club. Gender and queer ideology told me that some people's identities, in essence, their gender souls, don't match their biological sex. Because of the trauma I was suffering, I desperately wanted to escape the pain in my body and become my highest self. It felt like a liberation that my biological sex didn't matter and that I could be free from the constraints of stereotypical social norms. Despite being suicidal, I was medically affirmed as a male, prescribed testosterone to inject weekly into my thigh, and approved to have my healthy breasts removed, being told that it was medically necessary to validate my confused identity. Regretfully, none of the gender transition procedures helped my mental health. In fact, I was soon diagnosed as having even more PTSD from living in the delusion that I could change my biological sex. I share my story because in Iowa, we have the opportunity to prevent trauma like I went through by admitting that biological sex is real and that having negative feelings about one's body doesn't mean that nature can be changed. I've learned through the bitter pill of trauma that lying about gender identity damages our most vulnerable and that children and adults should be safeguarded from experiencing a tragedy like mine by passing informed laws that are based in science and not a misguided spiritual and ideological belief. Thank you.
And what do you think about that? You were sitting right there when she
Yeah.
gave that testimony. And actually, I had to splice it together because they had to stop it at one point because the crowd was yelling so loudly.
Yeah, I'm on the education committee, and so I'm in the middle of this. And I would note to people that, the folks that are calling me ungodly, I don't know if they'll watch this or not, but I would note that last session, I wrote and ran the bill that doesn't allow the kind of thing to be done to minors that Laura was talking about. We no longer allow
Yeah.
puberty blockers or hormone therapy or gender reassignment surgeries for our minor children. I ran that last year along with the bathroom bill that mandates in our schools you have to use the bathroom of your biology at birth. So that was the public hearing on what people are commonly calling the governor's "What is a Woman" bill. And the governor is putting this out again as part of the battle that we are engaged in to save our culture and our society from the lies of the militant transgender movement. I have said many, many times that movement has gone from just let me be me to just let me be me and you must agree. And so they are seeking to destroy anyone that doesn't agree with them, putting men into women's sports, erasing women, silencing their voices. It's unbelievable. And so this was on full display during that public hearing. They would scream and shout at the top of their lungs to try to silence those who were speaking in the hearing that oppose their viewpoint. And Representative Wheeler, the chair of education, Skylar Wheeler, would stop the person from speaking until the crowd quietened down so that they had the opportunity. He calls it the heckler's veto. We've heard that before, and he wasn't going to allow that. And so the hearing went on, and folks were allowed to speak their piece. They held up horribly obscene, grotesque signs and screamed and hollered obscenities at everyone. This is the heart and soul of that movement. They are militant. They want to destroy anyone that doesn't agree with them. And that's what we deal with at the Capitol every time we run a piece of legislation that's trying to restore truth, because our society has gotten to a very, very bad place at this point. And so we're going to continue to stand up for those things. I have to say, Oliver, I don't think Iowans quite understand how blessed they are to live here and all the things that are going on in Des Moines to try to stand up for our culture and stand up for truth against the decay that is taking place that you saw, that your viewers just saw in the video you put up, the short video you put up about the things going on at the Capitol. We deal with that stuff every day as we fight for truth and for the values the country was built upon, and we'll continue to do that. But folks, I would just say to some pastors and folks, instead of calling people ungodly when you don't agree with them on a particular position, you need to open your eyes a little bit wider and look at just how many things are going on in Iowa to try to stand up for truth and to stand up for the values that our country was founded on.
Yeah, and I had the opportunity to spend 2 days with Laura, and her story is just heart-wrenching.
It is. It is.
1 hour psychiatry visit, she was given testosterone.
Yeah.
And just railroaded down into this. And she really, after the hearing, we had a reception for her. There were several legislators there. There were probably 50 people there, and she spoke for 15, 20 minutes and answered questions. And she really likened it to a cult, that with that cult mentality, and that, the people that are there shouting and screaming and yelling F you to the governor and everything, there's a lot of mental issues there.
Oh, there definitely a lot of mental issues there. But that's one of the things that just curled our hair last year at the House Government Oversight Committee hearings, was that these doctors that are performing these procedures in Iowa now in Iowa, we were not, before we outlawed it completely, they were not doing bottom surgeries, but they were doing top surgeries, removing breasts. And I
hate that term, top surgeries.
Yeah.
Why don't we just say mutilating young girls and cutting their breasts off?
Yeah, exactly.
But that's what they call it.
Yeah. And the doctors testified that they were not following these children at all into adulthood to see what the consequences were, to see what the mental health consequences were, to see what the success was with these folks. They weren't following that at all. They had no data whatsoever that they could provide to the House Government Oversight Committee on what happens to these women once they cut off their breasts, and what happens to these young men and women once they start giving them these hormone therapies and puberty blockers. And again, people don't want to face the facts, but the facts are very clear that the overwhelming number of children that are going through gender dysphoria return to identifying with their biology once they go through puberty. But hey, let's give them puberty blockers and cut off their breasts and do all these things to them before they've gone through puberty and realize, and go back to identifying as their biology. It's absolute insanity. And it's a very, very bad moment in our history. And that's why we're trying to, right the ship of state in a number of the things that we're doing. And that's why you see the reaction you see going on at the Capitol. There was one state representative who ended up getting into a little bit of a tussle with one of them because they stuck their, I think it was a phone or something, right in his face. almost assaulted him, and he had to push him away. And then they tried to file assault charges on the state representative. And of course, the county attorney said if anybody needs to file an assault charge, it needs to be the state representative against this person, because they're the ones that, so it was
Yeah.
just you just have to deal with the fact that that's what's going on in our society. But folks they should watch those videos so they know what we're dealing with up there.
Yeah, it was a zoo. It was insane. And
Yep.
I didn't see any sort of peaceful protest going on. We could have called that an insurrection at the Capitol.
Yeah. And I do support, listen, Oliver, I love our country and I love our free speech rights. They have every right to come up there and protest.
For sure. Yeah.
I support that 100%. Now, I think it's disgusting that they want to come up there and scream obscenities in front of, there were high school kids there showing their projects. This wasn't this week, but the last time they came up on a different bill, it was the bill I was running, or I okayed. I didn't run it, but the bill that I okayed to strip gender identity out of code, they came up and just shouting all kinds of obscenities and disgusting things with a bunch of high school kids that were there showing their science projects and what have you. And so it's really tragic and sad that they do that. But I do believe, I think we have to defend their constitutional right to do that. I think one of the debates up there is, okay, they have the constitutional right to come up and protest, but they don't have the constitutional right to silence people who are at the public hearing trying to state their piece. So that's something that's difficult to navigate, because they're out there in that public area that is traditionally used for people to come up and protest and hold rallies and that sort of thing. But they're so loud on purpose, specifically when people that are the opposition are speaking, that it becomes a difficult thing to navigate. But rest of the
I wasn't happy about that. I was number 25. Yeah. They stopped at 24. I was standing right outside the door.
Yeah, I saw you outside the door there. Yeah.
Representative Wheeler had to stop so many times that we didn't get it. But I did give my testimony at the reception, and it was well received, and nobody was chanting it down. So
awesome.
And there was a young woman who came that I interviewed. I interviewed her and her mother, and they had left Wartburg College because they were allowing young biological males to use their showers and changing facilities. I interviewed her, and she came to the Capitol, and she didn't get to speak either, but she was able to speak at our reception. And I thought it was impactful, when legislators can meet people that are victims of this and have dialogues with them and humanize the issue beyond the protesters and the hate speech. I think it's really good to do that.
And I think as hard as it is, the American people need to stand up against this stuff. I mean, this is a vocal minority that are bullying everyone into silence. And it's hard because you get called every name in the book. I know, because I get them every day, but you just got to stand up for what you believe is the truth, because, there's a lot at stake for the future of our kids and the future of our country. Yeah,
it's the most heinous attack on our children in American modern history. This whole thing is.
Yeah.
And that bill, it's passed subcommittee, it's passed committee, so it'll go to the floor for debate soon.
Yeah, it's I think a lot of floor debate will begin in the coming week. We just finished the first funnel deadline was this week. And so this coming week, I think, is when you're going to begin to see a lot of debate on the floor. We passed supplemental state aid out of the Iowa House Education Committee yesterday. We also passed a teacher pay raise and a very different version of AEA reform than what the governor originally put out, but still some of her good ideas in there, and just a little bit longer timeline and a study this commission to make sure we're doing the right things. And so I think you're going to begin to hear supplemental state aid should be one of the first things debated, because we've already missed the deadline. We're supposed to pass supplemental state aid within the first 30 days of session, or within 30 days after the governor gives her conditions of state address. And we weren't able to do that because of the AEA discussion. So hopefully that'll be one of the first bills you'll see running next week. And then, of course, we've talked about Religious Freedom Restoration Act on here. I hope to get RFRA to the floor in the next few weeks. I think it's one of the most important pieces of legislation that's come through my committee. So I want to get that to the floor, along with the prohibition on the guaranteed income program. So there's a lot of good stuff that we've done that I hope we can get to the floor and pass and sent to the Senate.
Yeah, for sure. And I spoke with Representative Gelbach earlier today about the AEA bill, and he was pretty happy with some of the changes that were made. And I know he worked on it quite a bit as well.
Well, a lot of the changes, a lot of the governor's great ideas are in there, but also a lot of the things that were asked of us when we went out and had our meetings with superintendents and with school teachers and with AEA officials. There's a lot of that stuff that's in the House bill. One of the things we heard over and over again was you need to increase the pay of our paraeducators. You need to increase the pay of those folks because they're so important to our special education students. We have a pay raise up to $15 as a minimum wage for our paraeducators as part of the salary package. And so, we listened, and a lot of the ideas that we were given are in the proposals that we passed out of the House Education Committee.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, it just shows that the process is working.
Absolutely.
Yep. Well, my message to those opposed to anything that Representative Holt does, that if you can speak to him with respect and have a intelligent dialogue. I mean, you and I have disagreed on some legislation in the past, but you've always been very open to discussing things with me.
Yeah,
I know it's because we have a respectful dialogue.
Absolutely, and I love to have discussions with folks, and that I disagree with. I've learned a lot. I've learned a tremendous amount since I've been in the legislature. And one of the most important things I've learned is to listen to the opposition and listen to the other side. It's difficult to have a dialogue with someone, though, when their reaction is, well, you're just not following God. That's just not something you can have a dialogue about. But I would certainly have a dialogue with anyone who thinks that women should be prosecuted for abortion, and explain my position and hear theirs. Or on any other issue for that matter, of course. And there are a lot of people who I do have respectful dialogue with. Unfortunately, social media is not a place where people, I don't think, are really interested in constructive dialogue. They're interested in bomb throwing, and that's what the folks are doing that oppose or upset because I would not move House File 2256. They're just bomb throwing. And that's why I've gotten to the point. I used to actually try to answer people and have dialogue with them on Facebook. I don't really do that anymore because people don't really want to have dialogue. So I will simply say, if you want to really have a constructive conversation, email me and we can have that conversation that way.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I always tell people, if you want to have an intelligent, respectful discussion, I'll talk to anybody about anything.
Absolutely.
That we disagree on. And I think that's how we learn, and we listen to people, and we develop a deeper understanding of things. But we're in this, we're so divided in our society, and especially when you have the veil of social media. It's like when people are behind the wheel of their car, flipping everybody off and getting road rage. They just don't think about it. It's not a real person over there.
That's right. That's how I think social media has so degraded our ability to have an intelligent conversation. It's really sad. People used to be able to have, not that too many years ago before social media, people actually were able to have a respectful conversation and agree to disagree. Today, as a result of social media, I think there's just a number of people that just want to throw bombs and just be as vitriolic as they possibly can be. And that doesn't advance the conversation for anyone. So it's sad, but hopefully there's still a lot of people out there that want to have intelligent conversations. So they're just not on social media, I don't think.
We'll keep working on it. And as a legislator, you have to be able to disagree on this legislation, state your stance and your point and everything else. But then if you agree, work together on another piece of legislation.
Absolutely. And, Reagan famously said, my 80%, somebody agrees with me 80% of the time, it's not my 20% enemy. So there's plenty of legislators up. Even on the Democrat side, I have friends on the Democrat side that we disagree on nearly every issue, but there'll be something that will come along that we agree on and can work together on frequently. And so you do that when you can. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks for the updates. Very interesting conversation.
Yeah. Thank you as always, Oliver. It's great to be with you. Hope you had a great Valentine's Day with your bride.
Oh, yeah. We had pizza, and I think we watched a show where we played some cards. My wife loves to play cards. We didn't really go out or do anything. I did the flowers and the card and the candy and all that. How about you?
Well, we're actually into skip bow right now. We've been playing a lot of skip bow. I don't know how many people
What
might
is
be
skip
familiar with
bow?
that game. It's a card game. Sort of might be a little bit like Uno, but not really. But it's a fun card game. And my wife and I and daughter and her friend have gotten into it. So we play a lot of skip bow, which is a lot of fun. So yeah, we love to play card games.
We do
Yeah.
too. We played Rummy, and one of the games we like to play is Jokers and Marbles. Have you ever played that?
I have not. No, I haven't.
It's like a
That's a card
fancy
game.
game of it's like a fancy game of Sorry. You have this board you put together, and you have the marbles, and then you use regular playing cards, and you try to get around the board and get into your home.
Wow. I will put another game out there for folks to, they can Google it. This was a game when I was a young kid in the 70s. It was given to me by my aunt. It was called Voice of the Mummy. And it's not a card game, but it's an amazing game. And it was given to me by my cousin here recently. It actually talks to you. It's just a great board game. And so they gave me an actual original 70s version of Voice of the Mummy. And so I love that game because I played it when I was a kid. And so I'll play that with my daughter and her friends sometimes too. So it's a lot of fun.
That looks interesting. I just pulled it up. I'm looking at it right now. Wow.
And
1971.
Yeah, incredibly, if you go on eBay, if you find one that's working, it has a little record player in it, and if you actually can find one that's working, you're going to pay $700 or $800 for it. So what this ingenious entrepreneur did is he came up with a program you can download on your phone. It's the Voice of the Mummy voice. So you press it just like you would have pressed, because most of them don't work anymore. The record players they put working, so you can just press it on your phone, get the same voice and everything, and play the game. And so what I've got is a complete version of the game, but the record player doesn't work anymore. So I have the program downloaded. So there's a lot of fun things like that you can do with games that, were big back in the 70s. So that's a fun one. The goal, there's these jewels all over the board, and there's a red jewel at the top. And the goal, when you get back to your place and end the game, whoever has the most jewels or points, because each green jewel is worth a point, and then the red jewel, the biggie, is worth 5 points. And then there's a snake, which is bad. That subtracts 5 points from you. But anyway, the goal at the end of the game is to have obviously have the most points. And it was just a great fun game when I was a kid. So I love playing it with my daughter and her friend now, and my wife when we get a chance. But it's a lot of fun.
I'll put that on my birthday.
Voice of the Mummy. Yeah.
Voice of the Mummy.
You're going to pay $500 for it on eBay if you can find one. So yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I want to pay that much. Maybe somebody should buy it and recreate it.
Well, there is a game company that actually takes old games, and they will produce new versions of it, perhaps with cheaper materials or whatever, plastic. But I mean, they produce the game, and it's very much like it was in the 60s or 70s. This one is not one that they've done that with, maybe because it would be so expensive in this day and time to make. I don't know, but they do that with a lot of games, but this one they haven't done it with yet.
I found a board only without the center part.
Yeah,
for $35.
Yeah, if you find a complete game, it'll be $400 or $500. If you find it with a record player that actually works, it's going to be even more than that. But you don't really need the record player, because you can download the program, and it works just as well.
Wow,
but it's really hard it's hard to find the game with every complete game piece in it. It's very difficult to find.
I'm going to get one of these, man. This looks cool.
It's a lot of fun. It is. It's a blast.
My wife and I, we have a little Airstream, and we like to go camping a lot. And that's what we do is we play games, especially if it's raining or something outside. But we'll go hiking, explore the little towns, and then at night we'll play a game like we have like a game called Timeline, where you get cards and you have to put the events in order of history. And she loves that because she's a history buff.
Sounds fun. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Anyway, maybe we'll have a Holt Bardwell game night sometime.
That'd be great. That sounds like a plan.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us and
yes, sir,
giving us an update, which is most important, on happenings at the Capitol and what we can expect. So,
thank you, sir. It's always a pleasure to be with you, Oliver.
Yep. You have a blessed day and weekend.
Thank you.